I think I look washed out. Do I look washed out? Out, not up. All right. Very good. One, two, three, four. Sunday, something do by day. Monday, Monday, da da da. Sipap beat da 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 da. It's Wednesday. Actually, it's Monday, isn't it? Well, I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic was a bear. uh, yeah, obviously with the holiday weekend and all, um, my whole routine was thrown out of whack. And shop was closed Thursday, and then I was in Long Beach house sitting all weekend. So I went to work today, and that was the first chance I had to get some picks of the week. Ba da ba da ba da. So first up, back to I'm all like I finally got all my stuff out, all the comics that I wanted, and then this week came along and it was like a gajillion things. So I'm like, all right, I already got to scale back a hair or three. But in the meantime, I did walk home with these bad boys. First up, Black Panther #1. This is volume 7. I was just looking at it. I don't know. Very nice Alex Ross cover there. I don't normally go in for that sort of thing. This one is written by John Ridley, who this earlier this year, and I talked about it a few times, wrote the Other History of the DC Universe, which was a Black Label series focusing on all the African American well, the non-white characters, not all of them, but probably most of them in the DC universe. And so, and that's I want to say that's been Ridley's Ridley's written a lot of comics with African American characters. The American Way, I believe, which I actually never read. John Ridley, and I think I might have said this, but I guess it bears repeating. John Ridley wrote a novel in the late 90s, early aughts called There's No Smoking in Hell, or Everybody Smokes in Hell. Everybody Smokes in Hell, which was, I said, oh, that's one of the best crime novel titles I've ever heard, and it is, but that's where it begins and ends. For that work, I didn't think it was a very good book at all. Of course, it's been 15 years since I read it. So, and then I would see Ridley wrote The American Way, which was a Wildstorm title from around the same time, and I said, I'm not going to roll those bones. And then I want to say I read something else that he'd written, and I was like, oh, this is okay. And then Other History of the DC Universe was really good, so it could have been like an issue shorter, I think, but. And this is another, I don't like, because I don't like talking like this, like, well, I guess he's fine now, but to continue my criticism, in 2016, I believe it was, near the beginning of 2016, Ta-Nehisi Coates started writing Black Panther, and at the time especially, he was very well known for his nonfiction work, and he wrote stuff for like the New York Times, and a lot, all of it, if I'm not mistaken, because again I haven't read any of it, has to do with him growing up black in this country, which is a topic I'm interested in. But for whatever reason, I never got into his stuff. But when he was announced as the writer for Black Panther, I was excited, and I hate to admit it, but I was excited because it felt like it would bring a little bit of not relevance. So I'm trying to think of a word somewhere between relevance and justification. But it's this attitude that the comic book industry and comic book nerds in particular have, where when somebody outside of the industry comes in and becomes part of the industry, you're like, oh, see? So Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's this very critically lauded, he writes for the New Yorker, and he's part of the literati, I guess you could say. And then he writes a superhero book, so I can go, oh, see, it's not stupid, it's which is a dumb attitude to have to begin with. Because as I recall, I was dating rather a liberal gal around that same time, and she was intolerable. That doesn't really have a whole lot to do with it. but I just wanted to shit on my ex-girlfriend from 5 years ago, almost 6. Anyway, Juan Cabal also is on art duties, and he's really good. We'll leave it at that. No, I was gonna say. So Ta-Nehisi Coates was announced as the writer for Black Panther 5 years ago, almost 6, and I was very excited for that reason, but also because there hadn't been a regular Black Panther title for a while. They were gearing up for the movie, so they gave him his own title again, and there's no way to say it. It wasn't good. There's no other way to say it. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a good writer, but his take on Black Panther for the first year or two, he did a very, what I have come to think of as like a Game of Thrones type story, where he did delve deep into the history of the nation of Wakanda and its government and how it governs, and you got all these sorts of power moves going on, and it was all a lot of politics. And this is like, I read the first 11 issues, and I was like, is he gonna fucking punch somebody? Or I've got no problem with non-punching guys, but not completely. What are you, nuts? Like, and then the last I want to say he wrote it. Yeah, I guess that would be right. He wrote Black Panther for about 4 years, going on 5. And the last half of his run was way better. It was called the Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda, wherein T'Challa, the Black Panther, leaves Earth to go exploring, I think. I don't think he had any real objective. He's just like, I just want to get out. You know how you do. You just want to get away from the planet for a while. But it almost immediately goes missing. He falls through some sort of weird time-space warp. And he ends up being enslaved by Wakandans, oddly enough. He doesn't remember who he is, but he knows, he's bound for greatness. And of course, he leads the slaves to a revolt, and they overthrow, and then he becomes. So it was really interesting is that thousands of years ago, Wakandans were the first to leave the planet, and they discovered the same wormhole, and so they began conquering planets out in space. And so this vast Wakandan empire had completely forgotten about Earth, though. Like, as time marched on, Earth, like the original Wakanda, was more a thing of myth and maybe. It was like a legend. And but then the real T'Challa, and so and all the people have Wakandan names, so like T'Challa and Shuri. So it's very confusing. M'Baku. There's all these characters who are not the Earth Wakandans, the ones that we know, but are named after them. But it was really good. And then by that point I had already dropped the book, but I was reading it on the app, and then I'd kind of let it. It was getting. Plus, I just have a lot to read, so I was like, I'll leave like the last 10 issues or so to read like in a go, and I did that, and it was kind of boring. So I don't know if that second half of Coates' run was just, it was just something different from what he had been doing, so I was into it. But then it turned out to not be great. Or if maybe he just didn't stick the landing. I don't know. What I will say is this. Coates is a fine writer. He hadn't ever written a comic book before, though. How good is he going to be at it right out of the gate? Maybe he should have started with a little whatever. But Ridley's on board with this, and frankly, I think this also, and this will come up with our next book too. You see all the Avengers and stuff, so I feel like this will be sort of the Black Panther we've gotten in the pages of the Avengers. The Black Panther somehow has been on the Avengers most of this time, even though he was in space for a lot of it. And so then it's just sort of like, I like when T'Challa is in Wakanda. He's the king of Wakanda, Black Panther, and all that stuff. But I also like when he's in the Marvel universe. So I think that's what this is going to be. This is going to be more T'Challa in the Marvel universe, which is good. Same with this book. This is Hulk #1 by Donny Cates and Ryan Otley. I've been jonesing for this for a while. I may have even talked about it earlier this year because I got to I read a preview. They released a preview of this for free comic book day. So the Immortal Hulk ended just last month. The Al Ewing's again another 4 year long thing where it was still in 616 continuity, but everything was happening very separate from everything else. And this, like within the first few pages, the Hulk throws a train at MODOK, and I said, "Yeah, that's what I'm here for, please." So more of that. I think this is like more Hulk smash Hulk, which I'm very very into. Donny Cates has really made his bones over there at Marvel with his couple years long run on Venom, which just ended. It's like him and Ewing switched. Ewing took over Venom, although Ram V is co-writing it with him, and then Cates took over Hulk, which Ewing had been writing. And yeah, but I mean, Cates has been writing Thor this whole time, and it's been really good as far as action and stuff goes. Cates knows how to write an action-packed book. I never at any point reading a Donny Cates comic do I ever go, is he going to punch somebody? There would definitely be punching. Otley, I know I just read something with Otley. In fact, well, Otley, I think Cates and Otley might have done. Yeah, I think they did Venom together. Oh, he did Invincible? That was him? I still haven't read Invincible, although it keeps staring at me. He did. Oh yeah, Spider Man. He was drawing Nick Spencer's Spider Man. That's right. Not Venom. Got it. So yeah, this will be. Even though I don't read Amazing Spider Man either, Otley is a really good artist, and honestly, I just want Hulk smash Hulk. Also this week, I got Joy Operations #1. This is from the Dark Horse Comics group, and this is written by Brian Michael Bendis, a name that I am rather fond of and have been for some time now. This is in the not too distant future. You have these cyborgs who are like, actually now I don't remember. I even wrote like for the shop newsletter. I wrote a little blurb like, "Hey, this is my pick of the week." I put this on the front of it. Actually, I think with my blurb, there's a picture of me with one of the cats on my shoulders because that's how we roll up there at Galaxy of Comics. I don't remember now. I do remember the not too distant future part, but that's all I really remember. But that doesn't matter because what it is it's a Brian Michael Bendis book. Brian Michael Bendis began writing for Marvel Comics in the late '90s, and he was essentially their head writer for the next 15, almost 20 years. In 2017 or 18, he jumped ship to go write for DC Comics, and he wrote Superman for a couple of years, most of which I've read, and it's really good. He also wrote Legion of Superheroes, which I haven't read because I've never read Legion of Superheroes. And he did like Young Justice, I think, and I want to say, and then he brought all of his. This is another Jinx World book. I don't know if the Jinx World logo is on here. It was on the poster that we have in the front window of the shop. Jinx World is Bendis's own sort of publishing imprint, I guess you could say. I mean, when you see Jinx World on something, it means that it's in its own sort of separate universe. It's his own. That's basically it. Jinx World is his own. Because Jinx was an early title that he had written for Image. So anything that wasn't his Marvel or DC work could fall under Jinx World. And he had published a lot of it, like Powers was a book that he did with Oming, which I still have, Michael Avon Oming, which I still haven't actually read. He did that under the Icon imprint at Marvel, and also an Image, and I'm not sure which was first, but I know he wrote a bunch of Jinx World stuff for Marvel, and then he wrote a bunch of under their Icon imprint, which I don't think did anything else but the Bendis stuff. I think Alias was a Max title. I have not read Alias yet. I've read, like, with a lot of these guys, there's very few, even the writers that I really like, there are very few of whom I've read everything. I think Ennis at this point I've read, there might be a handful of Judge Dredd stuff of his. But, like, there's huge, I think there's pretty big chunks of Grant Morrison's work that I haven't read. Even Alan Moore. Alan Moore, though, I've read most of his stuff. I don't know why I'm explaining this to you, but so yeah. Even though Bendis is one of my favorites, I haven't read everything he's written. So I don't know why he's not at DC anymore. I don't think he's writing anything for them now. I haven't really heard. I haven't really looked into it, but I asked Warren at the shop, and I don't think he knew it either. He's been kind of mum about it. When he left Marvel and went to DC, it was kind of there was like it was in the news. You know what I mean? But yeah, he kind of very quietly left DC, or for all I know, he might still have something in the hopper over there. But now he's over at Dark Horse. And that's the thing with you. If you're Brian Michael Bendis, you can pretty much write your own ticket at this point. I mean, he's definitely. I don't think he would. I wouldn't even think he would need to work anymore. He's been a comic book professional for half my life. I can't imagine he's hurting. Maybe he just likes them. I don't know. I can't imagine why anybody would like doing this shit. I'm kidding, of course. So last week I read a ton of stuff, but this is the only. I just stuck with the slow deaths. Like I read a big stack. In fact, last Tuesday I didn't go anywhere. Like I didn't end up going to the Improv or anything. So I just read all day. But actually, I mean, I didn't really feel like because I think the week previous I'd read a bunch of stuff, and then I just kind of burned through it really quick. So I was like, why don't you just make it a shorter one, and do that, and then we'll go from there. So yeah, I read the Slow Death numbers 2, 5, 8, 9, and 10. And they were good. They scratched the underground itch that I'd been having for a while, and they were also very one note. I mean, it's an ecological, like I was saying before, it's an ecologically minded sort of Tales from the Crypt that they were trying to do, complete with tributes to old EC comics. This is I know I showed this before. It's so good. This is William Stout, who, aside from being like an underground comic book artist, I knew him because he drew the cover of the Rock and Roll High School album by the Ramones, and he'd also drawn the cover of a Who record, oddly enough, made to look like a Tales from the Crypt comic. I can't remember which Who record it is now, though. And he also drew the cover for the Yardbirds' Greatest Hits, so he's more an illustrator, I guess, but he did do a lot of underground stuff. What was also noteworthy of reading these, because they're all from the 70s. It was very like the shape of the environment now, the ecology now, is much different than from the 20th century. And so, like, a lot of the stuff they're worried about in here is stuff that we're still worried about now, but it also hasn't all killed. Like, nuclear power is not the boogeyman it was when I was a kid. It's still not something I would encourage in others, but, you don't hear about as many three-eyed fish being pulled out of the streams anymore. But and there's even there's what's his name, Greg Irons, I think, did the bulk of these books. And there's also a lot of artists and writers that I never had heard of before, and I don't imagine did anything else ever again. But even Irons sometimes in the stories would be like, okay, he would do stuff like he would have a comic strip going on the top of the page that was just a goofy comic, and then all this text about the horrors of nuclear or the medical industry, which I was like, this is probably the most relevant thing to today. And then there was one where like he comes into the comic himself and is like, I don't have a way to even end this. This is not even funny anymore. So stuff like that was fun. But yeah, it was just kind of it was a fun walk down memory lane, remembering being terrified of dying different ways than we have now. In my day, we were afraid of being annihilated by nuclear bombs. And now it's a pandemic. That was actually one of my biggest complaints at the beginning of 2020 was I had been assured that I would die in a nuclear apocalypse, not some sort of plague. Like I'm a 16th century peasant. Come on. I live in the future. I want to die in the robot apocalypse, for Christ's sake. Yeah, it was Pixel last week. So I'll do it. I'll be back in a couple days. Although I have shows this week, so I don't know when. But I'll get the rest of my books Thursday, and let's meet back here, shall we? Yes, I think so. Okay.